Baseball's going to go through the same question.
Oh, yeah.
The NFL might go through the same question. The NBA's first up.
Yep. And it's funny, on a lot of these issues, we kind of take our cues from the NBA. They have been kind of a leader throughout all of this.
When I'm telling you, we've had this conversation before. You might as well have it again here before we throw to break and then take your calls at 844-204-RICH. When the NBA shut down, when Rudy Gobert tested positive for COVID-19 before tip-off in Oklahoma City, and they canceled that game and had to cancel another game, I believe, in Sacramento, right? Yeah. Because an official that had been officiating a Jazz game had already flown on a plane to Northern California. Yep. They shut that game down. And then they decided, we got to shut them all down. When the NBA decided to do that, it was a monumental moment for this country in terms of all of us as U.S. citizens realizing the seriousness of this problem and the importance of staying home if we can. That this was going to fundamentally change the way for a certain period that does appear to be the rest of this year bleeding into 2021 as we're sitting here on the second day of April. That it fundamentally will change the way that we have to look at our lives and live our lives. The NBA was the first one to really bring that into focus. Sports was so important again in leading the way in this country to change our fundamental approach. Then the NCAA tournament canceled a little bit late after a couple of tournament games tipped. Mike, you were at the soundboard for a Big East game. Which was in the middle at halftime. They're like, let's finish this up and then we're done. And it's just like, why are we even finishing it up?
Yeah, what's the point?
But and then hockey and soccer and, as we know, golf, tennis. Remember Indian Wells canceled? And everyone's just like, what are we doing? Right. Like, oh, yeah, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
So even when sporting events began to cancel, the initial reaction was, what are we doing? The NBA was the first one to say, this is what we're doing. Because, again, it's still piecemeal on the government aspect of things. The governor of Georgia today, after issuing a stay-at-home order yesterday, today, on April 2nd, 2020, said the words that he didn't know that asymptomatic people could possibly be carriers of COVID-19 and others could get it from asymptomatic people. That it was unknown. Like, how is it possible? Again, sports setting the tone because some states are still going about their business because they don't see it there. It's going to be everywhere. It is everywhere. All right. The NBA is going to be the first one up to basically make a decision. Do we create a bubble city or not? And how does that work? I'll tell you what, and I want to be consistent here. If the NBA pulls it off, we're all watching.
Oh, yeah.
We're all watching, and it would be such a major diversion.
And we need
But how do you pull it off? Like, again, you'd have to quarantine everybody. All 30 teams would have to shut it down for 2 weeks, and they'd have to be tested and looked at, and then they'd have to get on a team plane, and everybody on that team plane better be clear and not pass it to each other. Then you get to a hotel in Vegas, and you have to probably quarantine there too for another 2 weeks. Wouldn't you have to just make sure?
Yep.
And then you'd have to, once everybody's clear, then you'd have to go into an arena where anybody who works in that arena would have to be doing the same thing the month before. And Mike Breen, who's at the microphone, maybe he would just call the game off of television. I called NFL Europe games off of a television screen from New Jersey.
Like the MGM Grand would be perfect.
I guess.
Grand Garden Arena, you're done. You have everything you need.
You'd have to pull that off, and not one person would have to test positive. Not a single one person.
It's
and then you could be a week into this tournament and somebody tests positive.
And then you got to shut it all down because you got to test everyone
You
again.
got to test everybody again. That's the